Hello and welcome to whatever this is. I don't even know what this is anymore. This is like a Be Live that we do. I usually have like the podcast and Adventures in Branding, so maybe we'll call it that. We could just do like an Adventures in Branding video vlog fun thing. Hi guys, this is Melanie Spring and I'm here with Christy Lamagna and we are here talking about awesomeness, which because, life is awesome and we have to do that. But we had planned this a while back and Christy and I were just chit-chatting about like what we could talk about. We were like, well, our last one went over so well. My mom got hardcore inspired and started changing how she did stuff. And I even told her about it this morning. I was like, Mom, you definitely want to make sure that like,
oh, hi, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. So we were kind of, let me just talk about that because this just said I have to change it to public. That's okay. Change your broadcast settings to public if you want to see the comments. Here's how to do it. Let me just do that really, really fast so that we can make sure that this goes super public because I want to make sure everyone can see this because I do not want this to be like a nobody can. So bear with us, human beings who are watching. I don't even know if anyone's watching, but that's okay. We're going to play this later and save it back super fast so that we can make this. I thought I made it public. I swear. Yeah, it's public. Whatever. People can watch. They can publicly comment, all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. Awesome. I'm excited. So we were talking about the fact that we wanted to chit chat and have a conversation about some like really big life stuff and event planning. And Christy and I have been working together even since our last event that we did online because of some stuff that I even brought up and was like, man, this is so amazing to have someone like you to get out there and talk
We're dealing with something in
back pocket. Yes. Well, yesterday, I just want to announce was my 10-year business anniversary. 10 years ago, my boss told me, what would you do if I couldn't pay you anymore? And I was like, well, I'd go work for myself. And he's like, great, you have 30 days.
Oh my gosh.
So
happy anniversary.
Thanks. That's pretty good.
He gave you your wings.
Oh, I flew. That's for sure. I mean, it's been bumpy, but
there's always a little turbulence. Yeah.
And what I promised yesterday, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to hurry up and just put a whole bunch of stuff out about videos and content that I did, because Speak with Confidence is this week. And, I'm learning to say no to things. I told everyone that I would do some bite-sized business stuff and be able to talk about like things that I've been through and things that other people have gone through and things that have been shared, stuff that would be really helpful for people to be able to see. So it would be really great to be able to kind of pull that into this. And I think it's such a perfect time to do that because we're literally talking about life, the ultimate event today. Yeah. And I think it would be such a great way to kind of blend the bite-sized pieces of business in with all of the how to live an amazing life and how to really not even hack it, because I don't think you can really hack it. Everyone talks about life hacks all the time. And I'm like, that's nice. But like, how do you really make it a habit and really make it who you're meant to be? So Christy, can I have you introduce yourself to everyone and tell everyone why you're such an expert at this?
Thank you. I am Christy Lamagna. I am a master strategist. I've been in the events industry for 30 years and I teach college. And one of the things that my students said to me over the 10 years I was teaching was, this class, you're teaching us to be planners and strategists, but this is really a lot about life. And that made me think about, life is the ultimate event when you think about it. I mean, we only get one life and it is one long event. And if you take the principles from planning a strategic event and you think about the outcomes and the goals, well, if you apply those to your life, any aspect of your life, then you can live your life with a lot more harmony and peace and strategy. When I say strategic, it doesn't necessarily mean professional, but it's with purpose and intention. And instead of things happening to you, you make things happen. So when your boss told you 10 years ago, you have 30 days, that could have happened to you, but instead you made something happen, and there's a difference. So I like to look at life as, if you compare it to an event, you have people who say they're going to show up and blow it off. You have people who show up and take notes and are actively participating. And then you have people who just sit there and wonder what's going on around them. And that's a lot like life. We have friends who will say they're going to, I will go get my degree, I will go get this job, and they let life pass them by. You have other people like the badass humans who you surround yourself with and who you lead, who show up and are sitting in the front row. And then you have people who sit around and participate, but not really. And those are the folks who just drift through life and don't achieve goals and things are always happening to them. Yeah. So it's very similar to attendees at an event. So this works out perfectly that we're talking about life and events because we are the architects of our lives if we choose to be. So, and you could have taken that as a huge hit to have lost that job. And instead it launched an amazing 10-year career and all the lives you touched based on how you chose to make life strategic. So you're the embodiment of what I'm talking about.
Well, can you go a little bit into your career and why events are such a big deal to you and how you're even teaching college students how to do this? Like it's because it's not like you're just like, oh, I just am a professor and I teach people how to do event planning. You actually, your career is this. So tell everybody a little bit more about your career and what it is that you do still that you're really making sure that people get that ultimate experience, not just in life, but also in their events.
Sure. One of the things that I learned early on is, so I have a background in media and journalism. So I'm all about the why, and I like to ask questions and I like to get the answers. So I learned early on that although I love to write, I really liked planning events. I ended up working in public relations, and in order to have something to write about, I had to plan events. But I realized I loved the event piece a tiny bit more than the writing piece. So instead of becoming a journalist who planned events, I am a planner who writes. So I kind of flip things and flip them. But what I learned very early on was that people were coming to events and hosting events that had no purpose and had no why. And people now, 30 years later, fast forward to now, everyone talks about design, architecture, and meeting design and experiential meetings. But the problem with that is if you post that this is going to be a talk about life, the ultimate event, and instead we end up doing 30 minutes of hysterical jokes, then the problem is people have had an experience and they may walk away saying, Christy and Melanie are hysterical. And everybody, rates this as fabulous. But the truth is we didn't deliver what we said. And the experience that they had was not relevant to what we said we were going to do, or didn't give them a meaningful experience. So people are producing events and saying, we're going to give them this experience. But when they leave, how have they changed and how does it further the goal of the brand? Right. So if you talk about life and say, or events, and I say, I'm going to host this meeting, most of the time, what I realized is people will come online or go on stage and talk about what's of interest to them, and they don't think about what the audience wants to hear. Mm-hmm. So I learned many, many, many years ago that if you plan events strategically, which is find out, here are my strategic goals for the year for my organization. When I know what those are and I create an event, I need to then hit pause and say, what does the audience need from me? Because if you give your audience what they want and what they need, they will give you what you want and what you need. So instead of me deciding this is what I'm going to speak about, I reach out to my audience and say, what do you need from me? What do you need to learn? What do you need to hear? What do you need to practice? And I give it to them, which will make them better at what they're doing, which means sales will go up, which means I hit my goal. And so many times in life, what we do is I want you to do this for me. And so all I do is come at you with my content. And the truth is, if I find out, Mel, what do you need? Because if I can give you what you need and I want airtime with you, instead of saying, I want to talk to you about this, I want to talk to you about this, tell me what kind of content you look for. Tell me what your viewers are interested in. And if I can deliver what you need, then you may say to me, that's great. Why don't you come onto my show?
Yeah.
So you can do that with life for anything, for jobs, for dating someone, for getting into a college. So when you start to think about your audience and what do they need and how can you be what's in it for them? What do I do to be the solution to the what's in it for you? Mm-hmm. People will choose you every time. People will hire you. When you think about going on a job interview, again, through working at events, and I would hire vendors and hire employees. If you're sitting in front of me looking for a job, I know two things about you. You want my money and you want this job. So for you to sit there and talk about yourself, I'm bored because who's the most interesting person in the world for all of us? Me, right? So if I want to talk about something you're interested in, I should talk about you. Yeah. So if I'm on a job interview, if you have 99 people or 100 people interview for a job, the overwhelming majority of them are going to talk about themselves. But if I come to you and say, Melanie, tell me what's something that's been on your desk for a long time that you would just love to hand over? It's a project you absolutely don't want to do.
All of the piles of things.
Right? So, Melanie, if you hire me, I would love to take some of those piles off your desk. Mm-hmm. And what is it that you're spending time on every day that is busy work that you would love to hand off so that you can achieve your goals. How can I help you, Melanie, achieve your goals? So when you hire me, what are the three most important things you want me to be able to accomplish? What are the three most heinous tasks that you're doing that you would love to take
Mm-hmm.
off your desk and give to me? And now all of a sudden, Melanie loves me because Christy's all about Melanie,
Yeah.
instead of I am this and I am that. So when you turn that around in a job interview, 99 times out of 100, that's the person that's going to get hired, because you made the topic of the conversation what I'm going to do for you, not what you're going to do for me.
Right.
So you take that and you can apply it to life everywhere, and it makes a huge change. And that is the essential component of strategic events. Find out what your audience needs and build content for that. That's life. And as soon as you learn that, things go much better, including negotiating a price for a car. It applies to everything. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it's also simple. That's the part we were talking about this last time, because my mom actually, I would like to share a little story that my mom had shared with me about her listening to your methodology and thinking about what it is that you do and how you do it. And the last time she had someone come in, she actually asked them, what are you looking for? What can I help you with? And she's always been that way. She's a very giving, she's always like asking people for their stuff instead of sharing her own. But she realized that while that person was in there, their whole entire personality kind of shifted and into what is it that I actually want? Like, what can I get out of this? And she started realizing that she wanted to be like, they don't have mayors in her town or anything, but she wanted to be on that kind of board that helps people connect with other people and help people really get the things that they needed and get the loans that they needed for their business and that kind of thing. And she's like, I'm really good at this because I do this already, but I never really thought about being super intentional with it. And so she got more intentional with asking that. And she's just like,
and it changes
I'm starting to shift it. Yeah. So even thinking about the job interview, I'd like to go back to that for just a second too. Anytime I've had someone say, well, how can I get a job when like I'm interviewing for a job? What's the stuff that I need to be knowing? I'm like, find out everything about that company and then ask them specifically about them, because they're not there to like learn about you as much as they're learning how you fit them. Yes. So I love how you do that with like, how can I ask you more about, because when you get to the end and you're like, do you have any questions? And you're like, no, I'm good. You're like, no, you definitely need to have some questions, even if they're just like throwaway questions, just because they've already like answered everything you need to know, but like put together some thoughtful ideas so that they feel like you're actually listening.
Right. And one of the questions that I suggest to people is, and I've done this even when clients have come to me and asked me to do a pitch, and I'll say to them, and this throws people off their game completely, but it's a really great question if someone will answer it, is when I leave the room and someone comes up to you and says, how did that meeting go? What are you going to tell them? What? It's like, so, who is it that you need to talk to about this meeting? What are you going to tell them when they say, how did it go? And it really catches them off guard. And so I'll laugh and I say, the reason that I ask is because there may be something that we didn't get to talk about that you wouldn't think about until you were describing the meeting. So can we do that now so that I can make sure that if they're, and people are just like, I don't know if I can tell you that initially. And you're like, I guess I could, because their thought is, well, I can't tell you what I'm going to say about you. And it's just that we're used to, you have those conversations when somebody's not in the room. Let's have it while I'm in the room.
Right.
And tell me what you think so that I can address any concerns you have or fill in any knowledge gaps, or we can figure out right now if this is going to work or not. And it's a conversation people don't have with each other. They have it with other people. And that question alone starts this whole, oh my gosh, and I'm not afraid to take risks. I can ask things without being offensive. I can get to the bottom of a situation. I'm not afraid to communicate. And it tells people more about you. Your actions tell them more than your words ever will. So that question usually works. But
it shows you how, if they're a good fit for you, because if they're not willing to be transparent with you, then you might not want to work with them.
Correct. So, and it goes back to, make it about them. What are you going to say? And so when we work together, if you say to me, I ask you that question, or before that, I'll say to you, so tell me what you're most excited about for when I start. What's the number one project you can't wait to get off your desk? Because it puts me in the situation of we are already working together. It puts you into a position of looking forward to handing me something, which kind of cements me being there. And it it turns it from a hypothetical into when I am hired, not if I am hired.
Right.
So yes, you
Which
are
are
completely
simple
right.
sales conversations. I mean, I learned that stuff when I
Mhm.
was like 22, just out of
Yeah.
college, learning from sales tapes, like the actual tape you put in the cassette player.
Yep.
Like Zig Ziglar kind of stuff. But it's not stuff that, and a lot of people are like, oh, sales techniques, they're terrible. I'm like, no. If you use them inauthentically, yes. If you're not being authentic and you're not really caring what they think, don't ask the questions. Like if there was a lot of people, you're making me think about just the wedding planning. And I've never had to do that. I've done tons of events for my own, and I'm not an event planner by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm really good at details. Like brand experience is my strong suit. So I want to make sure all the little details are taken care of. And as I'm walking through places and venues and trying to talk to people about things, they'll ask questions that I know they don't care the answer. They don't want it. Like, what's your dress look like? You don't care. Like, why are you asking that? Like, and I can tell you don't care. Like, if you actually cared, I'd want to show you. Or like, it's like someone saying, oh my gosh, you got engaged. Congratulations. And then there's like, there's a ring. Oh, that's right. Like, that's a part of this whole thing. Like, okay, that's nice. But like, can we actually have like an authentic conversation instead of just asking me the questions to make me feel like it?
Right.
Which doesn't make me feel good. So
no, you can't fake authenticity.
No. Oh my gosh. We could have a whole hour about that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about how you really got into thinking about how your event planning stuff really fits into life. Like, how did that transition move into not just taking all of the stuff you teach people and like in college and also do on a daily basis, but how did you shift that into, well, all of these things actually fit into life, the ultimate event? How did that happen?
So if you think about, or I started to notice, because I did take a step back because it was I call them my kids, my students were the ones who kept saying to me, we learned so much about life. We learned so much about life. So one of the things that I teach them, and one of the assignments that for 10 years, every week, this was the assignment, was you need to meet someone this week. And it would start out simple, where you could talk to the person in your math class who was sitting right next to you. But it was, life is about who you know. But then you need to learn that it is not about what they can do for you. It's about truly, and we've talked about this before, collecting people and connecting them. What can I do to add value to your life? And I tell this story about someone calling me because Steven Seagal needed someone who spoke Russian to get on a jet with him. And this guy called me and said, if anyone knows how to solve this or find these people, it's you. So, which was a huge compliment to me. And I did help him. So what I try to teach these students is, if you make yourself a resource and are able to give fully and freely, the people who surround you are people who you can truly count on. And what my students learned was, so in the beginning, it was they talked to someone simple because they were afraid. And then it would be, Professor Lamagna, I was at Crate and Barrel, and the woman in front of me was talking about such and such. And it's funny because you're talking about your wedding. She was talking on the phone to her mother, crying about the fact that her tailor went out on maternity leave and her wedding dress is there and she has to pick it up tomorrow and the wedding is in 2 days and she didn't know what she was going to do. And my mom makes wedding dresses. So I said to her, excuse me. And she came to my house, and like, so this woman's wedding was saved because my student learned how to pay attention and wasn't afraid to talk to this woman. And this one my student changed this woman's wedding from a disaster to a delight. The mother got a new client. And it goes back to it. If life is a pageantry of events and it's never ending. And so when you think about the people in your world and how you collect them and how you connect them, and doing it just because it's as natural to you as breathing, and events are about goals if you plan them strategically. And if you think about you were saying, when you were in college or when you just got out of school, you listen to those tapes. When we're in school, we have a very specific, here's your syllabus. This is what you will learn over these next few months. And this is how you'll be graded and you'll be held accountable. Well, how many of us, upon graduating, came up with a goal of, the cliches? I'm going to learn Italian. I'm going to learn to play the piano. And we don't. And no one knows the difference because there are no more marking periods. There are no more syllabuses, and no one's grading us. which is how
There's
you
no
wake up.
accountability.
There's none, which is how you wake up 10 years later. I still can't play the piano. I still don't speak Italian. And so when we think about that, if we don't set our own goals and hold ourselves accountable and create a culture of accountability, again, with those people who we meet, who we have collected and connected, and it all started to build on each other of the people in your world and the goals that you achieve. And then you think about when you're creating an event, you have fiscal accountability and how many people you don't need to look too far to find out that, 12% of Americans have enough saved for retirement, and we're not fiscally responsible. So then when you think about budgets, if we bring that into our lives, and how are you taking your life, which is the ultimate event, and are you hitting your goals, and are you itemizing your expenses, and do you know what credit card to use to get the most money back, and how do you handle your finances? Then we do menus. And if life's the ultimate event, how are you nourishing yourself? And so every component of the event goes back to life. And when we think about, you're talking about your wedding, negotiating a contract. Well, how many contracts do we negotiate in our lives? And when we look for a venue for your event, there's a whole contract process. Well, most of us either live in an apartment or buy a house, there are contracts. And what do you look for when you go to buy a house or rent an apartment? And those are things that I teach people for site selection. And so everything I was like, this is completely parallel. So experience just clients who are hosting meetings versus the people who I consult and coach as it relates to their lives, because it's the same thing. The irony is there are more attendees in life than there are in meetings. Think about all the people you interact with and the amount of money that you spend in your life versus an event. So people think events are these big deals. It's life that's the big deal, and the event is just a moment in time. So we need to spend as much time on the main stage, which is our life, as we do for the smaller shows, which is these events that I'm planning. So it was a perfect segue.
That's awesome. And so how do you apply that if someone came to you and said, hey, I'm interested to know more about how I can do this for myself? Like, how do people do that?
So one of the things that you need to do is there are 5 principles with event planning, and these are 5 strategic steps that I have created, and they apply to life. And they're, again, incredibly simple. None of this is, when we talk about it, you say, oh, I'm not smart enough to learn this, or like the piano is too hard, I can't learn it. None of what I share is complex, but it is difficult to do because you have to hold yourself accountable and you have to be disciplined. But when you think about, you need to be the answer to the question, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
You need to remember most of the time it's not about you. So if I show up late, or I show up cranky, or I do not treat you well, or I am jealous of you or competitive with you, it honestly has nothing to do with you. And we, because our favorite subject is us, tend to make everything about us. So if I snap at you, it could be because I was up all night because I have a newborn. But if you don't remember that it's not about you, people who fester over everything, right? And what did I do? And did I upset her? And now I'm going to lose my job, and worry about things that don't even exist. And I could come back to you and say, Melanie, I felt like this morning you were really rude to me. And you're like, when was that? And you don't even know what happened. And I've just lost sleep over the fact that you're definitely going to fire me so you have to remember it's not about you. Other people's behavior has to do with them, not with you. What's in it for me? If you can be the answer to that, or you approach every conversation or situation with what's in it for them, if you are not the answer to what's in it for me, they will choose something else. Remembering that it has to be, you have to understand what the other person wants and then deliver it, which goes to what's in it for me, but you also have to then have valuable content or a valuable offer. So you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing is worth something to whomever it is you're offering it to, and be sure that what you are offering is worth their time. Everything is transactional. I'm going to give you my time, and in return, you're going to give me wonderful conversation. You're making dinner for me, whatever it is. Then you need to, and again, in meetings, it's considered measure and evaluate, but you need to be in life aware of your surroundings, what kind of reactions you're getting. So one of the things that I say to people when we talk about the life side is, how do people feel when you walk into a room? And most of us don't think about that. So if you think about, Uncle Bob shows up and everything is fabulous because Uncle Bob is a blast, but he always brings Aunt Madeline, and oh my gosh, Aunt Madeline. So if someone were to say to a group, Melanie is coming to dinner tonight, what are the things that they're going to think? And what are the things that they would think if at the last minute someone said, oh, Melanie couldn't come? Are they going to exhale? Are they going to be disappointed? Are they, so how do people feel when you walk into a room? And that's a great way to measure and evaluate your effectiveness or your, what your presence does to a room. And is that good or bad? And you need to be aware of that because most of us are not self-aware enough to figure that out.
Yeah.
And then step 5 is after you have that data, analyze it and make adjustments where needed. So ask the questions, make the changes, hear the feedback, or know how to read a room, and then make the changes, and then you start all over again. And it's just this continuous evolution, because the minute we stop observing or learning, we're going to stagnate. So it's all very simple, but it's hard to do. So I work with people to teach them that. And again, it goes for hours. And one of the other things very quickly that we talk about is I have a curious mind exercise. And what that is I start and I'll say to someone, Melanie, pick something up on your desk. It could be anything. You could pick up a paper clip. It could be a water bottle. Okay, what is that? Say it again.
Headphones.
Headphones. Okay. So one of the things that I would do for a curious mind exercise is type or write for 90 seconds every single question you can think of about headphones. Well, that's ridiculous. And I can't think of 90 seconds worth of questions. Why would I? And what we find is if you do that, and then at the end of 90 seconds, pick up a different object, and you realize how quickly your brain starts to loosen up, because we're so structured and I have to do this and I have to do this. And if you take this creative exercise and then you do it at a dinner party, everybody pick up we're going to use a fork, and then you go around the table. And what's the most interesting question you thought about a fork? And you realize how different people's brains work, because someone's going to say, I wonder, and we've established that this fork is made of, sterling silver. What part of the world was this sterling silver mined from? And I wonder who the person is who found that sterling silver and what their name was. Like, oh my gosh, I was thinking about, I wonder if this is still on sale because I love this pattern. So when you do something like that and you allow your mind to wander, but with purpose, everything that you look at then starts to, if you have a curious mind, everything that you pay attention to, the way you synthesize and process information changes. But you also realize when you go around a table and do something like that, I need to talk to this one because, wow, she's probably someone fabulous to talk about if suddenly now you need to do something on genealogy, or it just teaches you how different people's brains work. And I never would have thought of that, but now you forever have that information if you're paying attention to it. And now you will add that into the repertoire of things that you wonder about or curious about, which makes you a better conversationalist, which makes you a better collector and connector, which makes you a better person to interview, and it all just goes round and round in circles. So a curious mind exercise is something that I've created, and I challenge myself with it every day. I will be at a supermarket and look at a pack of gum, and instead of being frustrated by how long it takes for me to get to the front of the line, how many questions can I think of about this pack of gum in the next however long it takes me to get there? And then I'll do it again with a particular, as it relates to events. And so, can I get gum that's custom wrapped? I wonder where it's made. I wonder if it's gluten-free. And so you can challenge yourself to do it, and really your brain is a muscle. But again, when you're talking to someone and I look at you and say, gosh, I wonder if that necklace, I always see that she's wearing it. I wonder if it has some significance. I wonder if her grandmother gave it to her. I wonder if it's inscribed. And you just become a more curious person, which makes you a better conversationalist, because who's the most important person in the world? And it all goes around in circles. So it's life is the ultimate event. You need to have a curious mind.
Well, this says badass in very tiny letters on it.
Of course it does.
And one of my very first speakers, Lisa Lucan, gave it to me because she thought she had it custom made just for me, because she was like, you are the ultimate badass, and thank you for all the help you've given me, which I love that so much.
See, and because we paid attention, I was just able to connect you with something that's very near and dear to you. And you may now reach out to Lisa simply because I asked you a question. And so everything feeds into everything else if you're living life consciously and with intention.
So that makes me think of something. When Dan and I were heading to run a race, and we had to go through the mountains, through Colorado into Utah. And as we were driving, I looked up and I saw a little bit of kind of like the netting grating for like a hiking path. And I was like, oh, look, there's a hiking path that goes across. He goes, that's where the velociraptors have to go so that they don't eat the cars. And I was like, What?
That's
That's
fabulous.
amazing. But then we're driving along a little further and we see this like factory off in the distance and there's white puffs of smoke coming out of it. And it's like probably steam or something. And it's like way off in the distance, right before a mountain. And he looks and he goes, "Oh, I've never seen one before. It's a cloud factory." And I was like those kinds of things where you're just like, why doesn't my brain go there? Like, I want to be curious enough to say, like, how could I look at something and completely reframe it in my mind to a point that I can see something totally different in it and be curious enough to know how to do that. And I feel like that applies to everything we're doing. Like, even I was writing a post this morning that I couldn't really get out. And I think this is probably why, because I needed to sit down and really think about this. But I was talking about how like this month is my 10-year anniversary. So I'm like, okay, how can I share some of the stuff that I've learned in the last 10 years or even just the last year? And one thing I was posting about was like that I'm not a speaker trainer. I'm not a speaker coach. I'm a brand strategist who helps humans show up on stages and tell their stories. And that's really all I'm doing is helping people show up for themselves. Like, I'm not actually teaching them how to be a great speaker. Like, I'm not competing against speaker coaches to do that. Right. Yes, I am doing that, but that's not my competition. My competition is you against the world. And how can I make sure it's not about you? And I was writing that thinking, how can you look at your like what you do versus what you really do and look at the parallels and where can you apply the thing that you're really good at and that you're really deep rooted in, where you don't have to change careers. You just apply it differently to a different place. And it could give you so much more joy because you're like, oh, I'd never thought of it that way. Because I've never, 10 years ago, I would have been like, I'm never going to do that. I don't even like speaking. What are you talking about? Like, speaking is horrible. Like, why would anyone teach people to do something like that? And now I'm like doing a big, huge event for the 5th time. Like,
Yeah. And to potentially say to your group, we're going to do a curious mind exercise. And this is pick 3 things that bring you joy and write down 10 things that you could do to make money with that skill and just allow people to open their minds, because we have such self-limiting doubt where we create limits on ourselves. And if, to your point about Dan and saying that's a cloud factory, you know, if you had said to me, write for 3 hours what that could be, cloud factory would never have come into my mind, because that's not the way my brain works. But if you pay attention and listen to other people and learn from them, like, and I can see why you would want to spend your life with him, because he's funny. I mean, like, he is funny and unexpected. Like, the stuff that he says, my brain would never go there. So what a joy to have someone like that in your life. And to him, that's not having a curious mind. That's just the way his brain works. Whereas I may say, I wonder how many particulates of this versus that. It's like, what would make you think of that? I'm like, what makes you think of a cloud factory? You know? It's fascinating. Yeah.
Like, you recently introduced me to someone who I had the most interesting conversation with. I'm going to totally forget his name right now, but he's a podcaster who does a lot of interviews.
Phil Gerbershek.
Yes, Phil.
Yes,
so
he's wonderful.
Phil and I got on the phone and we just sat on video and just like whatever came up, we talked about. And it was one of the most fascinating conversations I've had, because my favorite part about it was there was no reason for us to connect other than just to connect. Like, you connected the 2 of us. And I know that that's your superpower. So being able to have that conversation with someone who like I could connect with so fast. And in 30 minutes, we were like, did we just do all of that in 30 minutes? Like, and then we were like crying, laughing by the end of this, because of the fact that we were just like on the same page with like, really, oh my gosh, how many times do you have to answer questions that you're like, that was really a question? Why is that a question? Are you kidding me? And he's like, I get to interview people that are like some of the most famous people and have like really deep conversations with them, because we're not talking about the weather. We're not talking about that latest Super Bowl win. We're talking about like deep stuff. And I'm like, we were talking about surfacey stuff and deep stuff like so fast that it was just like click, 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 like, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah. Like being able to have that with someone is just so rare now, because people don't have that. How can I take this and which thread do I want to go with it? And how can I go in a different direction, where most people would have like, oh, well, it was nice to meet you. Like, so tell me more about what you do. Like, that kind of stuff ends up happening. You're like, this is boring.
Yeah. I'm going to bet you that if you needed something, you would call Phil because you feel like he's a friend and someone in your life, as opposed to some guy Christy introduced me to who I had a half-an-hour conversation with.
Totally.
Like he's a total connection.
Yeah.
And that's the difference when I say collect and connect. It's not Melanie meet Tom, Tom meet Melanie. Oh, hi, nice to meet you, and away you go. It's like you two have truly connected and can be part of each other's lives. And if you were to call Phil and say, hey, buddy, could you help me with? He will stop what he's doing and help you, because that is a genuine, authentic connection. And he cared about who you were, and he asked a question and he listens. And it's a genuine, there's a difference between, so I always talk about stop networking, because that's just, it's surface level, and truly collecting and connecting is incredibly meaningful. And if Phil called you and said, Melanie, I need you to meet so-and-so, just the way when I said to you, you both need to meet, nobody questioned it. It was, I trust this person, so I will meet the other. Think about now the power that both of you have for each other and the people who you know in your lives, because based on, and again, this all goes back to the group that you have connected and collected, what you bring to those people, they take you at your word, and that allows you to open up yourself to other people and then introduce them to people in your lives. And it makes meaningful connections, and it's about what's in it for them on both sides. And it just makes life the ultimate event, because meeting Phil and Phil meeting you enhanced both your lives, as opposed to just a silly random, I don't know why we're having this conversation.
And we really didn't have
minute call.
We really had no idea. Like, you just introduced us and said, you guys should know each other. We're like, okay,
meet each other.
Let's see why. And so we just started going back and forth. We're like, okay, now I totally see it. Like, it makes complete sense.
it's how you and I met. You know, Greg Plum said, Christy and Melanie, you have to meet. And now here we are. And it's, if you are that type of person who has a network around you of people, or collection of people who you believe in and who you can trust, you can go on faith and say, I don't know why this is, but I know it's worth doing, because there's an adventure at the end of this phone call and I can't wait to have it. And now you have someone in your life through Phil and he through you who can absolutely make a difference for each other. And it was because you're a badass and you don't let an opportunity pass you by. And
okay, so give us one last tip for how we can collect and connect, or really kind of go deep with people, or even just like take this curious mind exercise and apply it to every day. Pick one. Anything.
You know,
one big takeaway we can all take away from this.
One big takeaway: if you can go through an entire day, and it's really hard, and have it not be about you, and just truly focus all day long on other people, and where would you like to go to dinner tonight? What do you think of this? And truly not have a single I statement throughout the day and give an opinion, and truly just ask questions all day long and be interested in other people all day, you will realize how rarely you actually do it. And to be present and in the moment. One of the things that I also encourage people is do video calls instead of phone calls, because you and I are truly connected. How many conference calls are we doing other things? So do an entire day with what completely intentional, that a month ago she wasn't, or she wasn't doing it with as much intention, because now it's habit and she doesn't even think about it. So I would say, yeah, make an entire day. It's not about you and what's in it for someone else. And it's incredible, the interaction and the meaningful conversations and experiences you will have, and how many more people you'll make happy that day with a lot less effort. Because if I don't wonder what it is that you want and I actually ask you, it saves me a lot of energy too. You're happier, I'm happier, and you have more time for important things because we're not guessing and dancing with each other.
I love that. Okay, so guys, more Zoom calls instead of phone calls. Make sure, because I totally get distracted when I'm not on a Zoom call. That's why I actually do that. I'm like, I'm going to be here with you, doing this thing with you, because otherwise it's not interesting, and I can literally check out of a whole phone call without realizing it. So I totally get that. And ask people for what you can do for them. Be more interested in them. Get to know the people around you and what you actually can offer to them, because you probably have the connections. I mean, that's one of the big things we're doing with Speak with Confidence this week. Is the reason this works is because I have all of the experts in my life in one place, where all of the speakers get a chance to access my entire network of humans who have what they need immediately. And that's the biggest value I can offer people, is being able to not just be the person training, but actually have the people there for them to be able to do it. So all right, guys, this has been awesome. Christy, thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited for your conference this week. I need to come next year so that I can help be part of your Kick-Ass Humans.
Oh, heck yeah. Let's do that.
Absolutely.
Yay. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.